Welcome to the Rusted Garden. Happy Mother's Day. It's been about 12 days since the last tour. I'll give you some tips as I go through, but things have really taken off. And a lot of questions I get asked, is it too late for me to start tomatoes or put them in the ground? Or is it too late for me to get the cucumbers going? You know, you have plenty of time. Once plants get into the ground and get started and the warm weather comes, they really take off. So don't be discouraged if you're running a little bit late. Go ahead and get your plants started or get them into the ground. I'm mulching between the paths. That obviously keeps weeds down. It looks pretty nice. But I also mulch my raised beds, and I use shredded hardwood. I like that because it locks together. I wouldn't use wood nuggets like pine nuggets or big chips. Try and get the shredded hardwood because it also breaks down nicely, and after about a year it can be incorporated into your soil because it's beginning to break down. But I use the shredded hardwood along the raised bed to really keep dirt and stuff from splashing up on the undersides of the tomato plants. And you can see these went in about a week ago. They're nice and green. They're doing really well. I'm going to show you a couple that I put in on, I think, April 28th. These are 3 beefsteak tomatoes. I am in a contest with Callie Kim for who can grow the biggest beefsteak tomato come August 1st. And I started mine in the ground, and they've really taken about 3 or 4 weeks to get to that size. They were protected by the closure because we had frost, but I wanted to do it in the ground from seed just so that I could do a video, because a lot of people say, well, do you have to seed start stuff in you know, the seed cells indoors? You don't have to, but you can see the ones that I did, you know, you have a nice big jump, but you're going to be surprised how quickly these catch up to the rest of the plants. I put in my transplants of the leeks to the left, onions to the right. They're doing well. And then I dropped seed for kohlrabi, turnips, radishes back there. As you come over here, you can see the paths that have not been mulched, and that was a different mulch. See how big those chips are compared to the variety I'm using now. I think it's Shenandoah. It's really shredded nicely. I like that. You can almost make a potting mix out of that, to be honest with you. It's like some of the garbage, no offense to the potting mixes, that use shredded hardwood. But you don't want big chips like that buried into your soil, because when they decay, they take the nitrogen from your plant. So shredded hardwood, as fine as you can get, makes a great mulch. Spinning around this way, I got some peppers into containers. You can put 2 peppers per container this size. They do perfectly well. You don't need to worry about them being overcrowded. The holes, the bottom of these containers have holes cut out so the roots go into the ground. The lettuces that I put in as transplants are doing extremely well. I've got endive, spinach, romaine, an oak leaf, and then premier spinach over there. Let me just show you a space over here. I'm doing a video now, it won't be up to probably next week, on how to control ants. This whole space had thousands of the little black ants, and I discovered them when I was dropping in those pepper plants. They were just all over the place. Well, I treated that with diatomaceous earth, and about 3 to 5 days later, you can go back, check out the hill. The diatomaceous earth gets into the joints of the insects, grinds their exoskeleton away, and they die off. And 3 to 5 days later, when you inspect it, if you've got nothing going on, that means it worked, and I have nothing going on. So the video is going to really show you how to use DE to control ants in your area. This plant was started, I always write on my markers, indoors on 3-4, transplanted on 4/28, and it looks beautiful. It was all beat up looking like this because while it was outside, we had the frost, we had cold, all kinds of damage. But once it gets into the ground, in about 2 weeks, your plants are going to take off. They're going to look beautiful. Coming across this way, I've got the perennial bed I always talk about. I reseeded a lot in there of perennial and annuals, so that there's a lot of color in the garden, a lot of flowers in the garden. When you come over here, that's a weed. Let me rip that out. And this will attract beneficial insects. I also put in a lot of red flowers because I want hummingbirds to come to my garden. And then just again in this space, these are transplant tomatoes dropped in on 4/28, and they just look wonderful. Swiss chards coming back. That was a little beat up by the weird weather we had. Looks really healthy. Same with all the kale. So things are going well. coming over here, if you want to grow cut and come again lettuces, you can use flower boxes. That's spinach. I just pick the leaves off as I need them, leave the roots in the ground, and the leaves will come back. And that will continue to happen until the warm weather comes and your cool weather lettuces and green spinach begin to bolt. These are my hop plants. They're doing extremely well. That is a collapsible 12-foot pole that I made in a video, and I'm growing the hops up there. And if you watch that video, I did drop in an extra stake into the ground and put another bolt through there just to give it some more strength, because people sent me a message saying these vines will get really heavy, so I wanted to be extra cautious. Just did a video for a channel I'm working with, All America's Selections. I'm building their YouTube channel, and the cool thing about that channel is it's all going to be about showing off the different AAS winners to help them, you know, get the word out. But also it's going to be a lot of garden teaching videos, and there's no commercials. We're not running any ads in front of them. So if you want to subscribe to that YouTube channel, it's called All America's Selections, Flowers and Vegetables. I'm going to be building that up over this year, and you can go and find information you need, and you're not going to have to watch any commercials. That's kohlrabi in the back behind the bolting bok choy. If you want to grow kale, you can grow it perfectly well in about 3-gallon containers. You can see how nicely they are. These were all transplants, massive. Cut and come again lettuce. This is going to get all cut down today. I said in the other video, when it gets to about this high, well, this is taken off in that 10 days. So this is all going to get cut down. I'm going to eat it, leave the roots in, it will come back. Same thing with this lettuce. This is not being planted to get to full-size heads. It was planted to just be able to pick the leaves off, drop them into your salad bowl, and, you know, dress it up as you wish. These are Tiny Tim tomatoes. They'll get about 12 to 18 inches tall. This is a variety that I mentioned in the last video that's starting to take off. I don't know what size that gets, but it's dwarf, and it was from a subscriber, which I really appreciate. My favorite leafed tomato is the silvery fir. Very cool leaves compared to the, I think this is that Early Girl? Yeah, Early Girl. Cool looking leaves. And you can see I've talked about these before, but it's just wonderful growth. I mean, once you get everything into the ground, your plants are going to take off. I want to show you these radishes real quick and a couple radish tips. If you've watched my videos, you know I said I've struggled with growing radishes. Well, I think I finally figured it out, because these are all forming nice radishes in there. One, you want to pick a variety that works in your area. 2, give them nice spacing. 3, make sure you don't put any fertilizer down. These are just living off of whatever was in the ground from last year. If you add in more nitrogen and more fertilizer, you tend to get a lot of leafy growth at the cost of a nice round red radish. Got some potatoes back there. I'll show you a couple of those up more closely. Peppers are in, and nice damage from snails and slugs, beating these up a little bit. But once the warm weather comes, this is just going to take off. And again, I'm planting 2 peppers per hole in most of the case here, because you can really pack them together. Here are the purple potatoes. Again, these will grow like the garlic. When they get to a height, begin to yellow out and die off, that's when you know that they're ready to pick. All the transplants from indoors, got a lot of them out, you know, into the garden. These are going to go to my community garden too. I've started taking them to work to give to people. Over here, I don't know if I did this in a tour, but I know I just did a video on it. This is my pepper area. Sweet peppers, hot peppers. They can cross-pollinate, but it's not going to affect the fruit that you're eating this year. So you can put hot peppers next to sweet peppers and not worry about, you know, biting into a sweet pepper and it's going to be as hot as a habanero or something like that. 2 plants per hole, really packed in there, and it's a great way to grow peppers. I recommend you do a little bit of experimentation and pack your peppers more closely than you think, because you'll get a lot more production. This is my kiwi plant, male, female plant. It's flowered once or twice over the last 10 years. I've never gotten fruit. It's a mystery to me. That's why I don't do videos on the kiwis, because I am not very successful at it. Let me take you up here real quick. Now a lot of people say, well, why do you start stuff, in cups? Why do you start them in seed trays? Why do you start them indoors? And basically it's based on your zone. If you have a long growing season, start them all out in the ground. If you have a lot of ground, you can start more seeds in the ground. Why? Well, for example, these are my cucumbers, zucchini, squash, and when you start them, make sure you start them in large containers. They get big. We've been having storms, as I said. I'm actually out here between rain. Make sure you dump out all the water because the roots will start to rot in these containers. So I start them like this because my garden's not ready space-wise for my Cukes, my Zukes, and my melons. So I start them this way. It's also a lot easier to start about 16 different plants in this small space, take care of them, get them to size. When they're bigger, they're going to be at a lot less risk of being damaged by insects and birds and stuff like that. So grow them in a space like this, transplant them into the garden, when your space is ready or when they're a little bit bigger. And when you start these in cells, once they germinate, you want to get them into the ground within 2 or 3 weeks. Don't let them sit in these cups or you're going to end up with bonsai plants. Here is a tomato plant, and right here you can see all these crazy looking bumps. That's not a disease or a problem. This is a vine that wants to root. So with all this rain and moisture, these are root nodes coming out. This plant wants to root. So that's why when you bury your tomato to about this depth, when you put them out into your garden, we say roots will come out. This is what's going to happen. These will all become roots and it'll go into the ground. Cilantro looks great. That's going to be a salsa tonight. And again, the tomatoes that I went through last video, talked about the different names. They went in on 428. About, 13 days later, they look beautiful. Let's go over here and talk a little bit about feeding. There's the dog who's now in the video. These are my indeterminate varieties. These will go into the garden in about probably 7 to 10 days. I thinned them down to one plant. When your tomatoes get to about this size, this is when you want to start feeding them your water-soluble fertilizer, your choice, every 10 to 14 days. But they're growing nicely, and these are all my determinate varieties. And again, I recommend making sure the nitrogen of your fertilizer is really at 5 or less for tomatoes, and generally throughout the garden. We use not so much too much fertilizer, but we use numbers that are just too high. So if you're putting in a lot of nitrogen, like at a 10 plus, you're going to get a lot of green leafy growth on your tomato. They're going to get thin, and they really do, I think, attract more aphids because they're weaker, they're juicy, the bugs come, and they start eating your plant. Give them less fertilizer, a lower number, NP and K, and just keep it consistent, and your plants will do a whole lot better. Spinning around this way, the peas are doing well. I'm growing a hop vine in a self-watering container. We'll see how that experiment goes. Really like the Patio Pride. This is a 12-inch pea, another All-America Selection winner. And what the cool thing about that is you could grow them in flower boxes just like that. You could fill that up with maybe 8 to 12 seeds. Week later, put it into the other flower box, and you could get a nice consistent harvest of peas over your cool weather season. Again, a couple more tiny Tims, perfect for containers. And then finally, my container plants, my flowers are doing well. I can't stress enough, the more flowers you have in your garden, the more pollinators you have coming into your garden. This is all going to have to be cut back because these flowers are starting to seed. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope your area has the right temperatures now. You're not getting crazy frost like I was. Crazy hot days into 90s and then down into the frost again. And now, of course, we're having storms and hail. So hopefully you're catching a break, especially on Mother's Day. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please check out my seed shop at www.therustedgarden.com. Thanks.